Great question. So this is such a common mistake that a lot of young leaders do when they're starting a team or a company, is they start talking about how different their product is. Yes, that's important, but what's the context for that different product? What's the origin story? Why was the organization started in the first place? I see this happen so often where, especially with young startups, they're so driven by their investments and their revenues and all of these things that even when they're successful, they forget all the team building. Start early, right? Start talking about the vision immediately. Start talking about why the company was formed, what challenge was faced. Say what your ambitions are for the team, what you promise to do for the team. I will be there for you, give you the resources you need, offer you top cover, and also push you and encourage you to push yourselves. And here's what I expect in return. I expect honesty. I expect you ask for help when you need it. I do not expect you to solve all the problems yourself. We're rooting for you. We're all rooting for each other. We want to see each other succeed. So you can talk about what you promise and what you expect back from your team. Start to create the community immediately, and then talk about it obsessively. You can still talk about the product and all those things, but now they have context. Great question. So remember, leadership has nothing to do with rank or position. Just because someone has a position of leadership does not make them the leader. Leadership is the awesome responsibility to take care of those around us. So your question, Molnar, is how do you be a leader if you're not the CEO? You don't need the rank to be the leader. You have to study what it takes to be a good leader, and you take care of those around them. So you can share vision, whether it's the companies that you believe in or whether it's yours. You can share vision with the people around you, even if it's your boss, somebody who works for you, or even your peers. It doesn't matter. You can lead all around, and you can do all the things that a good leader is supposed to do. In other words, be the leader you wish you had. And you'll find that strange things start to happen in your little community and your little group. I've seen it happen multiple times in organizations where these mid-ranking leaders take it upon themselves to be the leaders they wish they had. And those teams become the highest performing teams. And those teams become super, super tight knit. And before you know it, that starts to spread. So be the leader you wish you had. Okay, so you can't force people to respect you, but you can be really honest, right? Now, people who are older than you, they have more experience than you. So a little deference goes a long way. And it's really great to simply show up to a team and simply say, you basically say what it is, which is, I just want everybody to know I'm fully aware that I am younger than many of you. I am also fully aware that you have more experience than me. My job is to create a path and make sure you have all the resources you need to take care of you and make sure that you can be the best versions of yourselves and that you can have the most success that you can possibly have. My job is to help you do that. And I will come to you as often as possible to ask you questions and get your point of view, because at the end of the day, you know a lot more than I do. You may even know more about this industry than I do because you've been doing it for longer. So as long as you show that deference, because that, by the way, is their narrative. Who does he think he is? I'm smarter than he is. I've been doing this longer than he. Just show deference. Some of that's true. So make clear what your role is as their leader. You're not there to tell them how to do it better. And even if you do have challenges and conflicts where maybe they're a little bit outdated, once you've earned their trust, once you've shown the deference and recognized that there are advantages in building that relationship, they'll be much more open to your ideas too. Well, it's like, how does a sense of humor play into making friends? How does a sense of humor play into meeting people or dating? Like, a sense of humor is the most wonderful thing in the world because it makes you human. But there's even more valuable thing about a sense of humor, which is you cannot laugh and be sad at the same time. You cannot laugh and be scared at the exact same time. And so I think maintaining a sense of humor, especially in difficult times, is essential. Because when we're under huge amounts of stress at work and somebody cracks a good joke, it actually puts us in a great frame of mind to come together and attack that problem, to overcome that challenge. So believe it or not, I actually think a good sense of humor is essential to great leadership. It actually helps us come together and make it through adversity. So yeah, love a sense of humor. Well, remember, when I talk about leadership, and what does it mean to be a leader? Why do we call someone leader? Like they lead means they go first. They go first into the difficulty, first into the unknown, first into the uncomfortable. And so if you have two leaders who are clashing in style, it only takes one of them to want to be curious about the other one. Usually what happens when you have two leaders clashing in style is they're both trying to be a little bit overbearing. They both try and impose. They both try to explain to the other person what my point of view is matters without actually making the other person feel heard. The irony is when you have leaders clashing, one of them has to actually be a little bit more of a leader, which means to back off a second and say, tell me more, I want to understand, and create that safe space. And the minute they feel heard, then they will be much more open to your point of view. And so all of that stuff that you're really good at doing as a student of leadership with anyone where there's any conflict, you apply all of that stuff in here. Oh, that's a really good question. The most impressive real story. So I don't know if it's the most impressive, but there's a bunch of impressive stories that I've heard. Very often you don't have to be born a great leader. A lot of the really inspiring leaders that I've met are people who sometimes screwed it up for decades, and they have some sort of epiphany or realization that something has to change. Whether it was like I've written about Bob Chapman. Bob Chapman, who's the CEO of Barry Waymiller, one of the companies that I love. It's a manufacturing company, and they lead with what they called truly human leadership, which I absolutely adore. Bob was one of those accountants who just saw people as a number, and he was actually at a wedding. And he had this epiphany where he watched the ceremony play out in front of him, where a father ceremonially walked his daughter down the aisle, gives her away. That's the ceremony, the giving away of the daughter, and then goes and sits down. And traditionally, that young woman will give up the name of her family and take the new name of her husband. This is the tradition, as if you're moving from one tribe to another, as if the protection that was guaranteed by the father must now be guaranteed by the new husband. This is the tradition of a wedding. And Bob is sitting there in the audience, in the pews, and he has this sudden realization that this father is giving away his precious treasure to somebody else to look after. And he realizes that everyone who works in his company is someone's treasure, is someone's son or someone's daughter, and they're giving their children to him to look after. And he realized that's not how he's been treating his people for decades. And so he had this sudden change of how he should start leading, and he went on the journey of becoming a student of leadership. I was just talking to a young entrepreneur a couple days ago who's 25 years old, and he's so inculcated in the traditional way of leading. He was pushing back on me. He's like, well, investors this and Wall Street that, and what I'm realizing is the ones who go through transition, it really takes a tremendous amount of courage, because the system, as people think it is, the system is us, does apply a lot of pressure on us to do the wrong thing. So that's one of my favorite stories, is the one of Bob Chapman. And if you ask people, how's your job, for too many years, people have said, it's fine. It's fine. It's never great. It's not that I'm having fun. It's not I'm learning a lot. It's fine. And you ask people who have a job that's fine, well, why don't you quit and find another job? And the problem is the unknown is much scarier than what they have. So if they settle for fine because the unknown future, or the unknown what I'm going to do next, is just too scary. And what happened during COVID is some people were furloughed, or we went through a lot of stress and strain. A lot of people had their incomes shaken, and we got through it. Like, we survived. And all of a sudden, the complications or difficulty or the story we tell ourselves about the unknown, all of a sudden aren't so scary anymore. And so now when we compare fine to the unknown, all of a sudden, I think a lot of people are a lot less scared of the unknown. And traditionally, it's some of your lowest level employees or your frontline employees that clung onto their jobs and were mistreated the most that are now looking at the unknown and saying, it's not so crazy anymore. And I think part of what we're dealing with is actually the culmination or a breaking point of years and years and years and years and years and years of companies getting away with being able to just create mediocre corporate cultures, and it's coming home to roost. So it's a period of complete upheaval. We don't know how it's going to settle, but I think and I hope that a lot of companies take it upon themselves to realize that they can do a better job. The companies with the best cultures, by the way, though they're losing some employees, are not losing employees nearly in the same numbers as some of the mediocre ones. So it's not even bad or toxic, it's just mediocre. So the great companies are not struggling as much because it's a fun place to go to work.